7 vibrational signs that reveal you hold both angelic and demonic energy. There's a reason you've never fully fit into any one box, a reason why you're drawn to the light but feel at home in the shadows. Why people either feel divinely inspired by you or deeply unsettled. You're not here to choose a side. You're here to embody both. And whether you know it or not, your energy holds a rare polarity, a sacred duality that not everyone is built to carry. You are one of the few who walk with both angelic and demonic frequency within your field. Not because you're cursed, not because you're confused, but because your soul has been entrusted with both. And the moment you accept that truth, your life begins to make sense. We've been taught to fear our darkness and worship only our light. But that teaching is incomplete. It's spiritual half-truth. Because the most powerful beings on this planet, the ones who truly shift timelines, awaken generations, and walk between worlds, are those who have integrated both sides of their frequency. They've stopped running from their shadows and stopped hiding behind their light. They've learned to wield both, and that ability doesn't come from reading books or quoting teachings, but it comes from living through fire. It comes from surviving ego deaths, heartbreaks, betrayals, and existential crises that would have shattered the average person. And yet, here you are.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You've probably always known something was different about you. Maybe you were the black sheep in your family, but the one who asked too many deep questions, the one who couldn't stomach fake smiles or hollow traditions. Maybe you felt watched as a child. Maybe your dreams were vivid, prophetic, or terrifying. Maybe you saw things others didn't, heard things they couldn't, felt things they ignored. That's not your imagination. That's vibration. That's the multidimensional signal that both light and dark recognize. And because of it, you've been tested in ways most people will never understand. There are 7 vibrational signs that reveal this dual energy within you, and once you become conscious of them, you start to see your entire life differently. The first is energetic polarity. You've noticed that your energy either heals people or triggers them. There's rarely an in-between. Some people are instantly magnetized to you, drawn to your presence like it soothes something ancient within them. Others recoil, judge, or project onto you without even knowing why. That's because your field doesn't just reflect, it amplifies. You don't just walk into rooms, you shift the frequency of the entire space. And that kind of energy isn't neutral. It confronts. It awakens. It exposes. Not because you're trying to, but because your frequency is alive. Have you ever asked yourself why you can read people so easily? Why you can feel their lies, their wounds, their true intentions without them saying a word? That's the second sign, spiritual X-ray vision. It's not just empathy. It's not just intuition. It's a vibrational gift earned through surviving your own inner darkness. Angels gifted you the light to see truth. Demons gifted you the grit to face it. And now you can do what few can see through illusions. That's why shallow conversations feel unbearable. Why fake people make your skin crawl. Why you crave depth like oxygen. Because your soul didn't come here to play games. It came to wake the world up. The third sign is your inner conflict. Most people think spiritual evolution feels like peace. But for you, it's felt like war. an endless tug-of-war between your higher self and your shadow. One part of you wants to meditate, fast and ascend. The other wants to destroy, seduce and rebel. And just when you think you've chosen one side, the other gets louder. That's not weakness. That's capacity. You were built to hold opposites. You were designed to feel the full spectrum of human experience. And the more you try to suppress one side, the more unstable you become. The key isn't choosing between angel or demon. The key is learning how to govern both. What if I told you that your rage is sacred, that your lust is powerful, that your jealousy, your pride, your hunger for power, they're not flaws to overcome, but forces to master? That's the fourth sign, emotional intensity. You don't feel like others do. You burn. And when that fire isn't channeled, it becomes self-destructive. But when it is, it becomes a weapon of truth, a beacon of change, a force that can tear down illusions and build something real. Your emotions are not enemies. They are messengers, guardians, gatekeepers to your power, and you must stop apologizing for their depth. The fifth sign is the presence of spiritual opponents in your life. You've dealt with people who seem almost assigned to derail you. Narcissists, manipulators, energy vampires. And every time you think you've healed, another one shows up. Why? Because your frequency is being refined. Every opponent is a mirror, showing you where you still leak power, where you still seek external validation, where you still doubt your own authority. And until you claim it fully, the tests will continue. Not because you're cursed, but because you're being forged. The sixth sign is your connection to the unseen. You've had experiences, possibly terrifying ones, that defy logic. The sleep paralysis, shadow figures, voices in dreams, synchronicities that border on supernatural. But that's not your mind playing tricks. That's your field activating. You are a beacon in both realms. Angels stand near you. Demons recognize you. And when your energy spikes through grief, passion, prayer, or ritual, they take notice. That's why spiritual hygiene is everything for you. You must guard your frequency like sacred ground. Not everyone should have access to you. Not every space deserves your presence. You are not just a person. You are a portal. And the seventh sign, the one few talk about, is your ability to transform. Not just yourself, but everyone and everything around you. You walk into people's lives and everything changes. They either rise or they fall. They either awaken or they run. That's not because you're intense. It's because your vibration confronts stagnation. You are a catalyst, and once people meet you, they can never go back to who they were before. That's not ego, that's frequency. That's the sacred responsibility of someone who carries both angelic and demonic energy. But now let me ask you something you may not have had the courage to ask yourself. What would happen if you stopped trying to be only light? What would happen if you stopped suppressing your shadow and started training it? What if the parts of you you've been ashamed of are the exact keys to your evolution? The sacred integration, how to train your shadow without losing your light. Most people are taught to run from their darkness, to conquer it, silence it, or pretend it doesn't exist. But those who carry both angelic and demonic energy cannot afford that illusion. Because your shadow isn't just your wounded child or your ego. Your shadow is your untrained power. It is divine fire wearing a mask of fear. It's the raw, untamed current of your soul before it's been refined by wisdom. And if you do not turn toward it, if you do not learn to train it, it will sabotage everything you love under the illusion that it's protecting you. This is why integration is not optional for us. It is sacred. It is urgent. It is what separates those who rise in silence from those who burn publicly. But you cannot carry both light and shadow without learning how to govern both. The first step in training your shadow is acknowledgement. You must stop pretending, stop performing. You must be radically honest about the parts of you that crave control, dominance, seduction, revenge, chaos, but not to shame them, but to meet them. Because the moment you meet your shadow with presence, it begins to soften. It no longer needs to scream, sabotage, or manipulate from the background. It becomes visible. And visibility is the beginning of transformation. You're not making your shadow disappear, you're giving it a role. You're saying, I see you. I understand why you formed. But I lead now. The second step is dialogue. You must learn to speak with your shadow the way you would with a powerful but wounded warrior. Ask it questions. What are you guarding? What are you afraid of? What belief are you protecting me from? Most of the time, your shadow is responding to trauma you haven't fully processed. It's the version of you that had to be fierce when no one else protected you. It's the part of you that learned to manipulate because honesty wasn't safe. It's the one who lied, seduced, destroyed, or withdrew because it was the only way it knew how to survive. Your shadow didn't form to hurt you. It formed to guard you. But now, as an awakened being, you don't need protection. You need integration. You need to bring that energy back into your command. Third, you must ritualize your integration. That means creating sacred space in your life to honor your full spectrum. Journal not just about where you want to go, but about what you're still afraid of. Meditate not just on light, but on your rage, your envy, your lust, your hunger for power. But invite them in. Sit with them. Don't resist. Don't reject. Just observe. And then decide. Decide what version of you will lead your choices. Not based on fear, but on alignment. When you make your shadow feel seen without handing it the wheel, you create a harmony that few will ever access. That harmony is your spiritual royalty. Training your shadow also means knowing your triggers. What sets you off? What patterns pull you back into old loops? Who activates your lower self? Those people, those situations, they are your temples. Not because they're good for you, but because they reveal where your shadow still has a voice. And instead of avoiding them, you now use them. You thank them not from weakness, but from strategy. Because every time you remain sovereign in the face of temptation, your shadow learns to trust you. And when it trusts you, it becomes your ally. Have you ever noticed how some of your most intense emotions come with a strange clarity? Like when you're angry, suddenly you see through people. When you're jealous, you realize what you desire most. When you're triggered, you remember past wounds that you thought were gone. That's not dysfunction, that's data. Your shadow is not just chaos, it's intelligence. But only when it's trained, only when it's met with consciousness. Otherwise, it will run your life from the dark. Let me ask you something that might flip your entire self-image. What if your darkness isn't the opposite of your purpose, but the container for it? What if your greatest power has been hiding in the exact traits you've been trying to suppress? What if your shadow isn't the threat, it's the key? We talk so much about stepping into our light. But light without shadow becomes blinding. It becomes spiritual ego detached, performative, disconnected from reality. And shadow without light becomes destructive, impulsive, chaotic, consumed by lower drives. But when the two are integrated, you become whole. You become magnetic. You become someone who can sit with demons and not flinch, channel angelic presence without floating away, heal others without absorbing their pain, and walk through this world with unshakable clarity. That's what training your shadow does. It doesn't make you perfect. It makes you undeniable. But integration is not a one-time event. It is a lifestyle. Every day you will meet situations that invite your shadow to take control. And every day you will choose consciously whether to lead from shadow, light, or the sacred center that contains both. That center is your throne. That center is where your power lives. That center is where angels and demons bow, not because you chose one side, but because you mastered both. The throne of duality, why you were chosen to hold the power of both realms. There's a level of spiritual power that cannot be taught, it must be remembered. It's not given by gurus, earned through rituals, or granted by lineage. It's something older, something deeper, but something sacred that was seeded into your soul before you ever entered this lifetime. And it's this: you were chosen to hold the power of both realms, not because you asked for it, not because you were better, but because your soul could withstand it. Because while others came here to learn, to follow, to evolve, you came here to govern. And that means you had to carry both the angelic and demonic frequency. Not to be torn apart by them, but to sit between them like a throne. This throne is not metaphorical, it is energetic. And if you've ever felt like you've been stretched between extremes, between compassion and rage, humility and pride, silence and intensity, it's because your soul is being expanded to hold paradox. Most people live in binaries. They have to label things good or bad, high or low, divine or dark. But you've always known the truth was more complicated. You felt the holiness in your rage, the clarity in your shadow, the sacredness in your struggle. And despite everything you've been through, some part of you has never collapsed. That part, that indestructible center, is your throne. But let's be honest, sitting on that throne hasn't been easy. In fact, most of your life has been training for it. You've been betrayed by people you trusted, attacked for your truth, gaslit for your intuition, and doubted even by those you tried to heal. You've had to question your own sanity. You've had to stand alone in rooms full of people who didn't see the war you were fighting in silence. And yet, you never bowed. Even in your worst moments, you didn't fully break. Because something ancient in you knew you weren't being punished. You were being prepared. What were you being prepared for? To hold the contradiction. To carry the tension of opposites, to walk into spiritual spaces and not be naive, to enter shadowy realms and not be consumed, to be able to speak with angels and understand demons, and to be able to translate between worlds. That's why your presence is so potent. That's why people project onto you, why they either idolize you or fear you. Because your energy doesn't make sense to the average nervous system. You carry too much. You've seen too much. You are too much. But that's not dysfunction. That's design. Then you were designed to be a bridge. And bridges don't belong to one side. They connect polarities. They allow passage. They make transformation possible. That's you. That's what you're here for. And the more you embrace that role, the more your life begins to click. The chaos starts making sense. The pain becomes wisdom, and the losses become freedom, and your identity shifts from victim to vessel. But here's the truth no one tells you. The throne of duality is heavy. It comes with responsibility. You can't use your gifts to manipulate. You can't weaponize your insight. You can't hide behind your pain. Because once you sit on the throne, your words become spells. Your thoughts shift timelines. Your presence influences realms. You stop being just a person, and you become a frequency. And that frequency either liberates or destroys, depending on how pure your intentions are. That's why you must stay clean. Not clean in the moral, performative sense, but clean in frequency, clean in motive. You must constantly scan yourself for ego, for shadow leaks, for resentment disguised as wisdom. Because the higher your vibration, the more precise your missteps become. You don't get to hide anymore. You don't get to pretend. The throne requires radical self-awareness. It requires you to check yourself before you check others, to lead yourself before you lead anyone else, and to be brutally honest with your own heart. Let me ask you something that could shake your foundation. Have you truly accepted who you've become? Not just the light you've cultivated, but the darkness you've endured. Have you made peace with the parts of you that still want revenge, still crave power, still ache to be seen? Or are you still trying to pretend they're not there? Because here's the secret: the throne doesn't demand your perfection. It demands your wholeness. It demands that you stop fragmenting yourself into pieces that are acceptable and unacceptable. It demands that you take all of you, your rage, your grace, your lust, your devotion, and bring it to the altar, not to be judged, but to be used. Every part of you has a role. Every part of you is sacred. And when you finally stop running from your totality, you become unstoppable. You were never meant to be one thing. Never meant to be fully light or fully dark. You were meant to be what very few can be: a sovereign and a spiritual royal, and not the kind that sits above others, but the kind who serves both heaven and hell with honor. The kind who doesn't flinch in the face of demons and doesn't idolize the light. The kind who bows only to truth. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. And now it's time to remember. The final initiation, becoming the mirror that transforms everyone you meet. There is a moment in the journey where power no longer looks like power. It doesn't look like being admired, followed, or feared. It doesn't look like loud declarations, grand rituals, or dramatic transformations. It looks like stillness, precision, a quiet presence that sees everything and needs nothing. It's the moment when you no longer need to prove who you are, because just being near you shifts people. Not because of what you say, but because of what you are. This is the final initiation, when you stop being a seeker, stop being a student, stop even being a warrior, and become the mirror. You see, mirrors don't judge. They don't react. They simply reflect. And that reflection, it transforms. When you've integrated your light and shadow, when you've sat on the throne of duality and made peace with all of you, you unlock a frequency that is undeniable. You become the kind of person others can't lie to. Not because you call them out, but because your field does. You walk into a room and people start confronting themselves. Their masks start to slip. Their shadows start to stir. Their truth starts to rise. and they don't even know why. That's the power of a living mirror. You don't try to wake people up. Your energy demands it. But here's the paradox: this level of influence doesn't feel like control. It feels like responsibility, because you realize people will project onto you. They will see their own light in you and call you divine. They will see their own shadow in you and call you dangerous. They will fall in love with their reflection in your presence and blame you when it disappears. And through all of it, you must remain centered, not cold, not detached, but sovereign, because you're no longer here to carry others. You're here to activate them. And that activation doesn't come through comfort. It comes through clarity. This is why the final initiation is not about gaining more, it's about letting go. You let go of needing to be understood. You let go of needing to be liked. You let go of needing to be anything but true. And in that truth, you become magnetic. Not in a way that pulls people toward your personality, but in a way that pulls souls toward their purpose. You become the fire that burns away illusion, the silence that exposes noise, the stillness that speaks louder than words. And people will come to you not for answers, but for remembrance. Because something in you reminds them of what they've forgotten, that they are not small, that they are not broken, that they are not only light or only shadow, but something far more powerful, whole. But this isn't the end of the journey. In many ways, it's the beginning, because once you become the mirror, your presence is no longer yours. It belongs to service. And that service doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it looks like holding space for someone's breakdown. Sometimes it looks like being misunderstood. Sometimes it looks like walking away from those you love because your frequency is no longer aligned. Sometimes it means disappearing completely so others can find themselves. And it's in those moments, those quiet, unrewarded, unseen sacrifices, that your soul ascends. Let me ask you something that only the brave can answer. Are you willing to be the mirror, even when it means being rejected for what you reflect? Are you willing to carry your truth, even when it disturbs the illusions others still need? Are you willing to walk alone, not because you're unloved, but because your presence exposes too much too soon? Because that is the real test. The final initiation isn't about what you can do with your power. It's about what you're willing to endure for it. Can you remain soft in a world that misunderstands depth? Can you remain kind without shrinking? Can you remain sovereign without hardening? That's the crucible. And if you can pass it, if you can hold your frequency, stay clean in your intention, and continue to reflect truth without ego, you become what this world is starving for, but a living reminder. You become the person who doesn't need a title to be respected, who doesn't need a platform to be heard, who doesn't need to perform to be felt. You become the person who walks into someone's life and nothing is ever the same. Not because you changed them, but because you reminded them that they could change themselves. That is the highest frequency, the final vibration. Not angel, not demon, but the one who remembers both and chooses to serve the whole. That is who you are. That is what you're becoming. And the world has been waiting for you to remember. Now it's time.